better learn to persist in giving towards God. You see, what you find with God, over the long haul, God will show you what He can do in your life. God will show Himself strong in your financial situation. If you, this wasn't part of my sermon, that one's for free. I want to challenge you, friends. Oh, but Pastor, it's tough. I know it's tough. I know it's tough. I think breakthrough comes through those who trust in God. David, here we are. A whole army's coming against one man, coming against David. That was tough. But God gave him breakthrough. Let's get back to the sermon. When we consider the word inquire, it means to lay charge, it means to obtain. We need to understand this morning that we need to inquire of God. And say, God, you've called me into this church, you've called me into this marriage, into this course, into this. So God, if you've called me into it, you will give me breakthrough in this area. But David was able to go out and have breakthrough over the enemy. Why? Because he knew that God had called him into that battle. Listen to me. You better know in your heart that God has called you to be where you are. Because the truth is, when we understand that God calls us into something, we know that God will lead us out of it. See, God doesn't call you into something just to kill you. God calls you into things to give you victory. Now, I think about myself. No, I said to the men this morning, I didn't feel called to preach. I didn't want to preach. I had a good job, whatever. I didn't want to preach. So when I answered the call to preach, I knew it was God who had called me. It wasn't my pastor. I didn't go into the ministry because I wanted to please my pastor. As much as I love him, I said, God, this is too big. I'm not doing it just for man. I got to do it because you called me. I prayed and God said, I've called you into this. And you know what, church? It was understanding that God called me into the ministry, that when times have been hard, when all hell has broken loose against myself, my family, and the church, I knew it was God who called me, and it was God who was going to keep me. That's why we have to inquire of God. Listen to me. God has called you into this church. I believe this church is going to experience breakthrough like you've never seen before. Secondly, have you brought your thing before God? Pastor, I pray about it every day. I'm asking you, I know you pray, but have you brought it before God? No, many times what you find, people say they brought it before God, and all they do is they just sit and they worry. Verse 10 of our text says, and David inquired of God, saying, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them in my hand? That word inquire, it means to pray. Listen to me. In the UK, people come to me with issues. I said, brother, sister, have you prayed about it? They say, well, pastor, God knows. Or God sees. I know He sees. Do you think that God responds to you worrying? Do you think that God responds to you crying? Do you know how God responds? God responds to one thing and one thing. God doesn't respond just to you needing something. He doesn't look down and say, there's my son Femi, there's my son, my daughter Kemi. No. That's not how God responds. God responds to one thing only, and it's prayer. He